Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I'm Sudha Jamte, and you're joining me here for our weekly live Q&A. And we are going to be talking about AV data. And last week, we spoke about autonomous vehicle data. So this week, I promised to build that up to talk about business models from autonomous vehicle data. So I see Usha joining me. Hi, Usha. Thank you for joining me. So I'm Sudha Jamte. I teach autonomous vehicle business and IoT business as two different courses at Stanford Continuing Studies and on my own site, driverlessworldschool.com. Okay. So I'm glad Usha is one of my um, first attendees here today because she had beautiful questions. Hi, Patrick. Hi, hello there. So, Usha had this question about how is the autonomous vehicle data stored? Is it in the EDL? We're going to build upon that, Usha. You're going to be very happy with what we are doing today, what we are going to cover today. So for those of you who are joining me, I'm Sudha Jamte, and this is my weekly live Q&A. I see, Toby. Hello, Toby. I see a lot of smiley faces. I actually love the emojis because that's easier for me to read than the text. So maybe you should ask your questions all full of emojis. Okay, so we're going to talk about autonomous vehicle data and the business models it drives. So, just to recap, when I talk about autonomous vehicle business, I'm talking about more than just building the self driving car. So, if you want to learn about autonomous vehicle business, if you're not local or you've not already taken my Stanford class, I would recommend go to driverlessworldschool.com, and I have put together an autonomous vehicle business Stanford archive free course. It's a big name, and it's basically my Stanford course archive with a bunch of my decks, a bunch of my videos, and I keep adding to it, and just to make it my archive. And so that should give you a fair idea. And if you don't want to register, I've put together some of the courses as free downloads. You can just take that too. Okay, and then what is autonomous vehicle data? So it is easy to assume it is just data from the car. So last week, what we did is we talked about the data in the car, and there are three digital twins in the car. A digital twin is just a digital replica along with the physics of some form of asset in a general IoT sense. And the digital twin in the car covers the actual functioning of the parts of the car, the actual environment of the car. When I get into my Tesla versus my husband gets into the Tesla, how is that tracked? That piece. And then my behavioral data. Am I pressing too much on the brake? Do I ask for streaming music of certain kind? Do I drive and go, or in this case, I drive my Tesla, or in an autonomous vehicle case, am I going to go from a specific location on a specific time? What are my behaviors? And you can even add more sensors, and there are certain automakers who are adding sensors in the car which collects more data about, by which gives augmented reality and VR in the car. We'll talk about that a little bit from the context of data. So that is to give you a sense of what is data in the car. And we just covered that last week in great detail. And I promised to give you an edited version of the deck. I'm sorry, guys, I could not get to it. So what I have is, I have a version of the deck. It's not quite edited. So I'm going to put it out at the end of this. I'm just going to put it out in driverlessworldschool.com. So you can go look at last week's version. And then I'll quickly look at this week's version and just give you a copy if you want to go back, look at it, or share with your friends and things like that. So do you have any questions for me? Because this is supposed to be a live Q&A. So that's why I'm not coming. Thank you, Usha. I'm glad you like it. So I'm not coming here with a set of deck and presentation. Just I'll be talking to my screen. So instead, it's good to see people and faces and questions coming up. And last time there was amazing set of questions. So if there is any question that you had pending that I didn't answer, I would like to answer that for sure. Otherwise, I will move on. So, what I'm going to do broadly, I said I'm going to be talking about autonomous vehicle data and the business model it drives. And I basically said that three digital twins, that is still a 1,000-foot view. What does that mean? So, what I'm going to do today, at least the structure of the content that I'm planning to cover, is I'm going to delve deeper into variety of different data in the car. And as I'm talking about it, I'm going to cover the various business models possible. I'm going to cover it from the perspective of different industries that are using this data or new businesses that could be created using this data. That's my main plan. And then when you go expand that, typically when you say data, autonomous vehicle data, we don't have autonomous vehicles already running everywhere. We have a lot of pilots going around in Silicon Valley, in Florida, in a couple places, and in London, and even Spain has a autonomous vehicle pilot that they tested out. And that doesn't is not touching us yet, right? So what does that mean today, tomorrow, next year, into the next few years, before autonomous vehicles become mainstream? And people have different opinions of when this will become mainstream. Many automakers and Tesla have promised by 2020 that they will get us a self-driving car in some form. So I do believe we're going to get that in when a commercially viable form. What scale, we don't know that. But between now and then, and my prediction is by 2030, this would become more mainstream. That's why I wrote the book 2030, The Driverless World. It's going to become more mainstream that we're not going to stop and stare or tailgate a autonomous vehicle, because it's just going to be a regular thing in our roads. And the opportunity that it's exciting for me to talk about this topic and teach on this topic and focus on this and research and mentor my students to go build more business in this space, is because I believe between now and whenever it starts picking up steam, and it might be different years in different countries, different areas, right, local areas. And so I believe that's where the opportunity is. And Mercedes came with this concept of case, connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. Patrick is saying KPMG autonomous vehicle. Oh, okay. He's shared a link. I'm going to make you see it. So, because if it's a URL, it shouldn't be a spam. So I have to approve that it shows. Okay. So I basically did a share and I don't see Patrick's link anymore. Sorry, Patrick. I thought I was allowing you to show the link. Otherwise, you can come back and post it, and I promise that I'll make sure that it's visible. So Patrick shared a link about the readiness index from KPMG about when we will get autonomous vehicles in different parts of the world. So thank you for that. So between now and then, what we are going to do, no need to share. Okay, it's just as an evidence. Okay, thank you. So so Patrick is basically saying this is not, it's not something that he commented to share, so it's not a big deal. Okay, thank you. So between now and then, what we are going to do is what is going to create this business. So those of you who are listening and tuning in weekly, and I started this out a couple weeks back saying, hey, I'm just going to tell you what is autonomous vehicle business. And I thought I was done putting my course out on Driverless World School. And I thought that's where I'm going to continue the conversation. And then I realized that, hey, there is, I need to drill down on AV data because that's a bigger topic. And we are continuing that AV data topic for the second week, and this is my third week of the live Q&A. And I'm going to try my best and make this a weekly routine to have this at the same time. I know it's convenient for some of you who are showing up, and it's not convenient for some of you who are complaining, but I have to pick a time that works for everybody. And so what kind of businesses can you build? What kind of industries are impacted, and how does the business model change, is where I believe the value is going to be created. And by doing that, You're actually going to change urban mobility in your local areas. You're going to impact the businesses that you're working with. In fact, I heard from somebody from in driverless world school, students who are taking this course can add a comment, and I heard from one of the students from Africa saying that they were very passionate about autonomous vehicle business because they wanted to, and this is from Lagos, Nigeria, and it's not Oluwatobi, it's somebody else, who basically said, hey, there's so much traffic and it's not unsafe behavior on the roads, and I want to change that for Nigeria, and I want to do this in such a way that it creates a economic opportunity, and which means they have to kind of generate money in some form, jobs in some form. So that's the big picture of smart mobility. So I want to pause and ask people if they have a burning question. And the second thing is there would you like me to just focus on the AV data? Because in my Stanford class, when I say AV data, I am talking about the data in the car, which is the three digital twins, which will go into greater detail. I'm also talking about micro mobility data, which is the data from all the mobility services like the rideshare bikes and scooters and the micro mobility. That's what it's called. It's not the car, it's everything else. And then the city themselves start asking for mobility data. So what I tweeted this morning, it's called MDS, which is mobility specification, mobility data specification, that LA has put together. It's actually on GitHub from LA. So it's on GitHub. It's called City of Los Angeles slash mobility dash data dash specification, and I will share that URL with you also on my tweet where I'm tracking. And I'm going to make a edited version of this, so I will add the URLs and post this when I share this on Driverless World School. So there's a GitHub on actually the MDS specification. That's the specification by which the city wants data from anybody who is driving any kind of vehicle to track mobility so that they can make policies and decisions. Okay. So I see Patrick sharing a link. So I'm going to put that. So I'm going to make it show so you can see it. Okay. Thank you, Patrick. You're so full of resources today. Okay. He also has this. So question. California has a similar proposal for data privacy law, similar to Europe's GDPR. How will that affect AVs? Thank you, Patrick, and the multitude of partners on the car platform. So, California has a privacy law which is almost like GDPR. And I've talked about GDPR, so I'm not going to harp on it, but there might be new people who might just want a refresher. So, GDPR is the best privacy policy that's out there in the world, and it's only for Europe or anybody doing business with Europe, which basically focuses on respecting the privacy of the individual, saying we own our data, and any business working with us should get permission to use our data at a broad level. And if you go deeper, and they have a huge hefty fines if businesses work with them and they fail and compliance on that. It's a huge fine that is actually making businesses actually follow that. So one of the things they have to do is they have to say, and this is also in the California law, the privacy law that Patrick was asking about. So one of the thing is they have to get permission of the user. They have to tell them how they are going to use their data, and if they change the way they are going to use the data, if they find a new way of using the data. So then they have to come back and get permission. And the fourth thing is the user has a right to be forgotten. So I can say, Starbucks, I gave you my information. I don't want to give you my information anymore. So I want you to purge all my data away from your system. So that purging is the bigger deal when the company uses their data and starts sharing that with other partners or starts building services on top of that data. Then they have to build it in such a way that they are compliant. So it brings a very interesting topic, which is about the technology of data, called privacy by design. But I'm going to park that for now, and I'm going to continue answering Patrick's question, because other than the privacy law, which is like GDPR, which Patrick was asking about, there is one more law in California, which is about a devices law, which was done more for IoT security, saying, if a manufacturer if somebody makes an appliance, and if there is a hack because of that. And I gave this example of my toaster being connected last week, so I'm going to stick with that. And if there is a hack to my network because of my toaster, then the toaster company is liable. They should have done everything in their limits that's feasible, that to protect, they should have done due care. And that is the other law, and that should be applicable to cars, though the law says manufacturers, it does not explicitly call out the cars. But when you start building mobility services using the car, if there's a hack on the car, then that becomes the issue in a so the car companies are not looking at that as applicable to them today, but that will become applicable to them because they need to have due care on the car. So those are the two laws. So hope that answers that. And one of Patrick's questions, or my interpretation, was what are car companies doing about it, or how is it impacting their plans, right? Their strategies on how they're doing. So one is yes, hi Richard. I always love it when I see my students. So Richard Myers is here. And Richard kept his promise. Last week at the chat, he said he's going to go to Berkeley and take a picture of that bot, the delivery bot. I think it's called Kiwi Bot. And he kept his promise and did that, and tweeted that. So I think I shared that on Twitter, but if people are interested, I can add that here too. So we are talking about, I'm trying to answer Patrick's question about the laws, the California laws are related to privacy and how that impacts, the car platform and the partners in there. So the biggest impact is, yes, they have to manage the privacy that they're doing. The biggest impact is what I promised that I'll get back, that I parked the privacy by design concept. What it means is, when you get data from a user, when you share it with another user, then you are responsible to make sure that it is GDPR compliant, or in this case, the California privacy law compliant. So if you are a car maker and you have the 3 digital twins, so you have information about the car, right? If you have information about the parts and how they are performing. Now, if you give that to a dealer network, you might have an OEM deal and say, hey, we are sharing this data, now go build services and offer roadside assistance to people. Now, if the user does not want that data tracked, or more, it's not specifically user data, but the actual data, behavioral data, would be very obvious for people to relate, but every data should be covered by the same law. So how the person is driving is another kind of data, which is very, very juicy for insurance companies. So insurance companies today, what they're doing is they're giving a dongle. Progressive has this, they have a dongle that they say, hey, put this in your car, we can start seeing how you're driving, what's your driving behavior. They don't use this choice of words because that's too obvious, but they say, hey, use this dongle, we can see how you're driving, and we can give you a better rate per month. We will adjust your insurance rate based on you being a good driver. And that means they're actually tracking whether I'm pressing too often on the brakes. Am I a good driver? Or am I, being rash? Do I make like fast turns at my curb and things like that? That is a data that the insurance company is giving me a dongle by which they're getting my permission to share that data. So GM, what they did is they have the same data. So what they ended up doing is, instead of an external dongle, they said, hey, we have the data, now we can give this to the insurance companies. So what they ended up doing is, they basically say, hey, we can give you insurance services if you want additional to the car, and by which we are giving permission to GM to expose our data and give it to the insurance company. So going back to Patrick's question about the privacy law and what it means for the ecosystem, this did happen before GDPR. And so now when they have GDPR compliance, GM has to make sure when they give the data to the insurance companies that they are responsible to make sure that if I say right to be forgotten and I don't want to use that their data, them to have my data or to be shared, then they need to get rid of it and purge it across the network. So there is a concept called privacy by design, by which they can architect their sharing of the data as it goes from partner to partner. So today I'm talking about AV data and business models. So I'm not going to go into the technology of AV data and what it means. So if that's of interest, we can talk about it another week. So hope that answers your question. And Richard, thank you, Richard. Richard actually shared the KiwiBot tweet that he did as a link here. So if people want to go look at that, that would be a good thing. So Patrick has a question. With the increased resistance against advertising based business models, do you see such business models develop within our ecosystem? Okay. Um, I'm going to be talking about the different business models. So I will get back to that. I do not believe that an ad-based business model will not happen in the car. I do believe it's going to happen in the car. I don't think there's an escape from that. And it's a huge industry with people actually accepting, to share their data to be shown ads. And so I don't believe it's going to go away. In fact, when you have the car, when you have more mobility with the car, and they can actually track where you are at a lat long level or a GPS level as you're taking your rides, I believe that's going to be more juicy data. And so they are not going to, ad industry is going to say, hey, we are going to geofence where you're going, and based on that, like the example I gave about the Starbucks, stopping at Starbucks on my way to work, they're going to say, hey, I see you coming here and I anticipate you to come here around 9 o'clock. So here's a coupon. In fact, today I've seen that at Target in Sunnyvale. That's the same one where I said they had the beacons in the store for IoT sensors. They have a little Starbucks box inside the store. And so as soon as I drive around to go park, even before I get down, it pops up a time-based coupon on my phone and says, hey, here's something off from Starbucks. And they want me to go buy something from the Starbucks inside Target. It is something that comes from Starbucks, but it is given to me through the Target app. So it's a relationship of Target with their Starbucks partnership inside their store. So there's an example of how it's an ad-based model, and there's going to be some kind of rev share, I'm guessing. But also, it raises the question of this GDPR, and if I say I don't want to my data to be shared to Target in their app, which is my interface, then they have to make sure that Starbucks purchased their data. I don't believe, at least they're not giving me that comfort level today, that they set it up that way. So the same thing is going to happen when the car becomes autonomous, and its way to become autonomous when you have shared mobility in any form, all kinds of rides and micro mobility options, all of them are going to track the data. In fact, one of the data that is outside of the car is what I mentioned when we got started, is MDS, the mobility data specification. Every city says, these are the data that you should give me for any vehicle that drives within the city limits. And it could be a scooter, it could be anything. And one of the things that we hear is it's a location data. A lot of it is location data, and this does not come under the purview of personal data yet, right? If you're using the scooter or a bike, then you might be signing off some somewhere that about that. They do give data at a very granular level. They give you even trip level data, and the city uses that to decide on congestion and safety and what time of the day are a lot of people here. Do they need to draw a separate bike lane? Do they, and things like that. And that data is mostly open when it comes to the city, but I don't know if that is the case with every possible city. In fact, this morning on Twitter I shared um, a picture about 12 different cities, what are their policies, what kind of things they collect. 12 US cities. I hope David Kerrigan will be joining us from Europe. He's my speaker at my Stanford class, who's going to be giving the mobility scene from Europe. Maybe David will be able to tell us what is the equivalent of this MDS in Europe, or I know it is on GitHub. I don't know. Hi, David. David is here. I wonder if this MDS specification, which is on GitHub, which is an open source standard that many US cities follow, I wonder if it is the same thing for Europe, or if is there a different standard. This is the standard. By it's when I say standard, it is not just the kind of things that the city is asking, but it's actually a programmatic API interface by which the city can draw this data from a scooter company, or the school, or they can put this out in some place, and so a third party can come in. This is an example of a business model where a third party can come in and offer a service. So one of you who want to improve your city can see whether this MDS data is available for your city, and build a program that would extract this data, and give some interface and give some services to people, and say, hey, I want to go to a certain part of city. I want to go to a concert, and I want to see what are my mobility options. Is it going to be congested? What time of the day is there going to be more traffic? And there's going to be a lot of possibilities. I just want to make sure that everybody is able to hear me all right, and see me, and everything is good. And yeah, can somebody comment on that? Okay, good. Thank you, Usha. Okay. So Richard says, I keep hoping my city will install smart traffic lights. And even when there are no other cars, then the light stops and starts. And I believe many cities are doing that. Thank you, David, for acknowledging. You can hear all right. So sometimes I wonder, because you're all typing and I'm doing the talking, so whether I'm just like a quiet. It's hard to keep me quiet for a long time. So Richard is saying, traffic lights. I hope your city adds that too, because most cities are adding a traffic light. That is another form of mobility data. So I've been talking a lot about the MDS and the micro mobility data and mobility city data, which is outside of the car. In my class, when I talk about autonomous vehicle data, I don't limit to the AV data inside the car, because it's all a whole ecosystem by which you can actually, the vehicle has to share the data. So with the city will offer services, somebody will offer services and about the vehicle. So it's kind of in that same purview for me. Richard says, I would think that's a good area for third party business. Exactly. Yeah. And so I had a student in my business of self-driving car course a couple years back, who was focused on one small town in Bay Area, here in Silicon Valley. And he wanted to make sure that bikes were safe while they were riding in a school area. And that was his calling. And he would go to the city council and try to convince them to block vehicles to come in a school area around a certain time. And he wanted a approach by which it was not just a policy that he was influencing in a small area, but that there was data. So he attended my class saying, I want to understand what kind of data can I collect? How do I build a service on top of that? And then I'll go get permission from the city to kind of collaborate. And this is exactly the kind of MDS data. And he can actually have data on when the bikes are driving and when the how many cars are driving and where is the congestion to kind of make his case. He can guide citizens in the or residents in the city to actually avoid certain areas, or he can use the data to go make a case to the city. And there's a whole bunch of services he can offer on top of that. Okay. So another question is good. Yes, that's the thing that Richard was talking about, the third party. So coming back inside the car. So when we got started last week about autonomous vehicle business, I mentioned in bits and bytes, everything is data in the car. So it is voice, it is sound, it is images, it's videos at a very technical, granular level, right? Everything that's collected in the car that is being sent out now in real time, which is Patrick's area, or is actually stored and then sent out. Um, in fact, I remember Usha was asking, is it all stored in the EDL? And I found out there are storage companies which are creating appliances in the car where you can actually store this data. One exciting news that happened um, this week is there was this autonomy day from Tesla, and they actually launched a hardware chip called hardware 3, which is a full, they call it the full self-driving car chip, FSD. And they basically said, hey, today you flip a switch and you turn the car into auto mode, and once we deploy this fully, then all the Tesla cars will be fully self-driving, which means you can drive around like a Waymo car or any other car, or a Cruise or any other car, through traffic lights and takes exits and all those other times the car, or you can summon the car, it would come and it would pick you up and it would run independently. That's their promise. They have the hardware ready, and they're saying, hey, the software is not fully ready, and we are going to iterate and build it over the next couple years. And all they have to do is they have to flip a switch, or it's not flip a switch, they're going to do an OTA over their update, and the Teslas which have this hardware chip, which will automatically become self-driving cars. And so the exciting news, and I spent a lot of time yesterday going over this because I'm writing an article on that, was Elon Musk said by mid 2020, he's going to get this software out in all the Teslas, and he is expecting to have 1 million cars out there which are which have this self-driving car capability, and people can take the app. Today I have the Tesla app, and I can say I can just open the car or close the car and things like that. Instead, I could actually summon the car if it's just my own and I just want to use it, or I have the option to join Tesla's robotaxi network, where I can say I want my car to become a robotaxi. And he had all this math about how we drive the car for 10 hours a day. So people go for an hour into work or hour of drive one way, another hour back. So they drive about 10 to 15 hours within the week. And he sees that within 168 hours of the week, maybe it will be like 50 hours that the car will be utilized. And if you put it out as a robo taxi, while you're working, while you're sleeping, the car can go take some rides. And in a rideshare lift like model, that you can earn money from the car, and obviously the utility of the car goes up. But what was striking was to say that there would be 1 million robo taxis, and he's obviously coming with a business model like an app store model or like a Uber Lyft model. He basically says you get the car to our network, and that would and Tesla would keep 20 to 30% of the revenues that's made, and rest of it is yours and it's additional revenue. So today the Ubers, Lyft, BlaBlaCar, all of those who are in the smart mobility, shared mobility space, what they are doing is they are actually buying their own fleet of cars, and they are managing this driver and passenger mapping, which is their data. And that is how they are making a business, which is completely a data driven business. At any point of time, they know where the demand is. Based on that, they can actually offer better rates, or there are too many people asking for a ride at the same time and they have less drivers. Then they increase the price and they do the surge pricing. That's how they map it. That's their business today. And so when Tesla says they are going to make that business, this is the first time a car maker is basically saying, I am going to give you, using my mobility platform, I'm going to give you a robo taxi service. And in fact, Cruise is testing this out in San Francisco. Some of the car makers who have the autonomous vehicle are testing this within their employee network without making it open for everybody, saying, if we offer a car sharing service or a carpool service, right? Would you avail of that? Here is our platform by which you can actually use your car to carpool with fellow employees to go on some rides. Google has that within their employee network. And they're all doing that to test whether people are receptive to give their car out, share this, work out their kinks in developing their own platform. But everything is about the data at any point in time. Where is the supply? Where is the demand? How much are people ready to pay for this? And so with the Tesla announcement, this is the first time a car maker has said, hey, I am ready to give you open up my mobility platform, but you, as somebody who has bought this car as an individual owner, can actually opt to join to my network, and by which now you can earn revenues. And obviously it's revenues for Tesla, and a whole bunch of liability, because if it's a robo taxi and it doesn't drive as safely, or if I give this car to somebody, they scratch it or whatever, right? So all of that comes with part of their business, where they're taking the 20-30%. So there is some cost for them in that. But the big question in autonomous vehicle space is that when the car becomes autonomous, like Waymo is launching this robo taxi service, or I've mentioned Drive.ai and YH.auto and others, when they have mobility services, right? When they have a shared mobility service, it is always somebody buying a fleet and offering that as a service to consumers. And the big overarching elephant in the room in the autonomous vehicle space is people believe that are going to consumers like us are not going to buy cars. We are all going to jump into one of these rides shared services, and that's how the future is going to be, which means car ownership is going to go away from a consumer mode to make that into a B2B industry. For the first time, Tesla is the first one who has come and said, no, you're going to buy the cars, you're going to own your cars. On top of that, I'm going to give this mobility service option, and with that you can go make money. And one interesting observation is Tesla says that they're going to give this full self-driving capability without increasing the cost. Again, most everybody who I know who's working on this autonomous vehicle space says that by making a vehicle to an autonomous vehicle, the cost is going to be at least 4 times more. And so they need to do something to recover that cost. And that is where the shared mobility comes in, because then you can share the car and increase the usage of the car. And one of the metric that you would see in the shared mobility world is what is the cost of the mile. What is it called? The um, cost per mile. Cost per mile is what the rideshare companies look at as what they are optimizing towards. And today, Uber is supposed to be at $2.06 or something like that, like $2 and some few cents. And Tesla showed that when they become fully, self-driving, and it's also how much is your car utilized is how you would optimize and get more money. So Tesla showed that it will come down to 18 cents per mile in terms of the cost of the car, because cost of the car today, if I don't have a self-driving car, then I have to buy the car, I have to pay my mortgage, I have to maintain it, I have to put gas in it, or charge and all that stuff. There's a cost to that. But if it is utilized so much, then it goes down. I see a bunch of questions. Usha says wow, so she's happy with my answer. So Richard is asking, has Tesla published market research on what consumers think about the new model of the car ownership? They just announced that 2 days back. I'm sure they have done some research or test internally. What they have done is they've given this to their own employees to actually test it out. But I believe that most everybody, as I mentioned in the last few weeks, most everybody who's in this autonomous vehicle space is testing for technology. And very few people are actually testing for the business model. So I don't believe they published any research. I believe they're testing only the test of the self-driving car tech. Is it learning? The AI model is working, gathering data, that kind of stuff. Waymo is testing a whole bunch of business models in Phoenix, saying, will people pay for the robotaxi? Via is actually doing a pilot with many different cities in US, which is an autonomous vehicle van, and they're working with the city to replace buses with this Via vans. It's like a 12-seater van, and I believe there is some cost to it. So the consumer pays a small chunk. Maybe it's like $10 for the ride, and city pays $6, and the consumer pays $4. Some combination like that. But they're testing that out. At least I believe those who are actually coming out and saying there's a cost to this, pay me for it, are being honest about it. Because David is the one who said this to me. I don't know if it is his own quote, but if you're not paying for something, you're the product. And so we don't want to be the product, especially when we become more and more privacy conscious. Okay, I see more question. So Patrick is trying to rephrase something and is saying, so do I understand it correctly that Waymo would be similar to Android, where Google partners with hardware companies, car brands with Waymo inside? Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated, but yes, that's the model. Anybody who's creating the self-driving car tech, Waymo, um, Apple, Samsung, all of them are going towards this. Hey, we are going to be your software layer on the hardware, which is what the car companies are making. Car companies are kicking and screaming, not wanting to get to that place and innovating big time. And actually, there's a lot of innovation from the car companies. They have mobility platforms. They are testing out various business models. In fact, they are investing in some of these companies. Mercedes has invested in Via, the 12-seater van that works with cities that I mentioned recently. They're investing, or GM brought Cruise, which is their self-driving car unit, and so they're kind of optimizing their portfolio of options because everybody's testing out what would be the winning business model. So coming back to data, so one of the data, the three digital twin is a very obvious one, but there's so many other data in the car. So one big data in the car is voice in the car, and there's a lot of Alexa integration and a bunch of Google Home integration in the car, by which you can talk, which I believe are simple OEM deals. I don't believe it's a big revenue sharing deal because I don't think there's any money in there. But Mercedes actually has their own voice software that they've created, the voice recognition software. So the Mercedes car, you can talk to it and say things that you needed to change things inside and stuff like that. The interaction with the vehicle, and that is voice in the car, and that is a form of data too. Again, the same thing. If when you're talking, every time I talk to Alexa, she wakes up, so I'm going to kind of whisper. When you talk to a device, it is actually collecting that data, and it can understand pattern of, it can actually create a voice biometric identity of a person. In the long run, an AI could be built with that. So that is also a form of data. I don't know if anybody is trying to go learn that to build biometrics identity of a person using voice, but it's a viable option. Richard says, talk to the car like that. Hey, Mercedes. Yes, that. Thank you, Richard. Richard posted a video. Richard, you're on a roll with these videos on Twitter. I have to give it to you. So Richard shared this Mercedes, hey, Mercedes. And it keeps saying, hey, Mercedes, just like a, okay, Google kind of. Okay, there, my Google has woken up and it's going to start.
I found a few candle stores near you.
Stop. Okay, Google, stop. from whatever I was saying, Google heard it and is telling me it has found some candle stores nearby for me. So it has some ways to go, but it could eventually learn. And I don't know whether the Hey Mercedes understands us any better and gets us what we want. What I mean, you think of the liability that comes with it. If I'm in the car and I want it to pull over and I want it to change my temperature setting and I say things, right? And if it just misunderstands and tries to find candle stores for me, what's going to happen? I'm going to sue the company if they don't pull over properly. So, but there's a lot of positive possibilities that, you could concentrate and drive and not get distracted. And that's a very big plus. And it's also changing the whole interface of, our interacting with the machine, and the car interface of what it can do for us is also changing. So voice in the car is one, and the other is, there's a whole bunch of experiences that is being created with sensors in the car by which you can interact with the environment. Remember, when this becomes fully autonomous, we are not going to have that wheel in front of us. We are not going to have anything else that we need to be taking care of. We can just sit and do work or listen to music or sleep or chat with somebody, whatever we want to do. And so, or chat with the car. I would like to chat with the car AI that would keep me entertained. And so, there is augmented reality, there is virtual reality. I did an Axios article, I'll share again, about this whole experiences. I think it came from CES. There's a bunch of announcements early this year, which was about augmented reality and virtual reality in engagement inside the car, and all of that is data. And what they're doing is, by offering this experience, they're actually collecting this data, and that is one of those data driven business models. Whether you would pay for that entertainment, or whether you would buy that particular car because it has that experience. So the automakers are betting either ways. So they're saying, hey, we will sell more of this car, which is kind of the same business model, or you could actually upsell services because you want that. So one example is Ask Mercedes, and I have a case study on Ask Mercedes on Amazon. You can check it out. It's more a digital transformation case study, if you're interested in that topic. But the Ask Mercedes is basically an app that Mercedes has as a companion with their car, and you can um, use augmented reality to point that app at the dashboard at different parts of the car and learn about, instead of looking at the manual, if this is like a digital manual and you can find information, it actually talks to you also. And the interesting thing I found out is the augmented reality was actually done by a company called Vuforia, Vuforia, Vuforia. And they have a lot of these beyond the car, but they did this for Mercedes. And it's an augmented reality. It's basically an inference model that they have run, looking using computer vision, looking at the car, and before anything got started, and use that as training data. And then they put that in the car. So that raises a very interesting question. And last week I said, I'm not going to have time. I'm not going to talk about it, about edge analytics. And I don't believe I'm going to have time to cover that this week too. But I'm promising to keep this as an ongoing conversation with you. So hopefully, we can get to it another week. So the data in the car, in this case, the augmented reality inference model, is put by Mercedes in the car when you buy the car, and then you go home. And after that, you might be trying to learn from using that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it might not work, right? And that is all training data. What they're doing is, they're not connected live. I told you last week that all the Mercedes have sim cards, and they're all connected, but they're not using that because the data payload would be expensive. So they're not sending that out to their cloud, but that data is sitting in the car. And they if you go back for service, they could extract that. I don't know if they're doing that. I like to ask Mercedes, and I like to find out. When you have an augmented reality inference model running in the car, as the customer interfaces with the car, that is going to be data in the car, and that can become training data to improve their model. Now, if they use that data and it's my data, so am I pointing at the Bluetooth or am I pointing at the speaker? What am I doing, and whether it is working for me or not? All that will become training data, and it also can tell them what am I using. So they have data based on this as to what particular accessory in the car is being most used by the customer. Based on that, they can decide to have that tier one OEM relationship, cost, revenue sharing done right, or they could actually decide to optimize on the space in the car and say, this is what the customer uses, we're going to keep this, we're going to get rid of these other parts. And they could use that in product design. They could actually offer a cost on certain things as a extra service in future. They could do a lot of things just as a automaker in the car, but that data is augmented reality data that is sitting, virtual reality, augmented reality experiences, all is informing about our behavior with that car. When I spoke about the three digital twins, this does fit in that one of the digital twins category. But it's not really a digital twin. It's not live tracking everything, sending. It's just data in the car, sitting in the edge, maybe sent out, maybe not sent out. I see a lot of question, and we have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to switch to questions. Talk to the car. That's what Richard was saying. Richard is sharing a link. This must be the Mercedes video. Yes, thank you, Richard. Usha says true. There is also insurance for AI bots. Yeah, insurance. I think we should talk about insurance, just about insurance one day, because it's huge business. So insurance for AI bots. I had not thought of that, Usha. That's amazing. And then Richard says different topic, maybe for another time. Uh, do I know about investment? Amazon's investment in AV space. Um, I actually did this as a lesson in my Stanford class about business models in my AV. Actually, I did that in my IoT class. I'm going to reuse that in my AV bootcamp coming up in May at Stanford, about what is Amazon's real business model and what are all the differences businesses they are involved in. And at that time they just announced they were getting into the car and you could do delivery in the car and things like that. So I'm not familiar with how much is the investment. I don't know if that's public information. I can look it up. But Amazon definitely wants to get into the car, and they look at this as mobility. So they're delivering to our home. They're delivering in all these in boxes, but they want to make sure that they are giving it while we are on the move. They don't want to wait for us to get deliveries only when we are home. So they want to deliver to us while we are mobile. And so I think Amazon's delivery in the trunk of the car, with I think they have that relation with two car companies. I think that's actual mobility service, one of the very first mobility service, and Amazon is collecting data. What item do I need so urgently that I'm ready to open my trunk and get it delivered while I'm on the move, and what location am I in whenever I get these things. There's a lot of possibilities out there. Before I forget, uh, today, as we are talking about autonomous vehicle data, I want to keep doing this Wednesday live Q&A with everybody. And I know some of you have got my autonomous vehicle business, the Stanford Archive free course. I'm actually launching a whole new course called The Business of Autonomous Vehicle Data. It's on Driverless World School, and it's a paid course. It is a replica of my Stanford course. It's the same model where it's fully online. It is a 4 week, and you will earn a certificate at the end of the course. And you would learn all the different topics that is needed under this as on-demand video, and it'll open up once per week for 4 weeks. But you will also have a real class session with me, with a bunch of students. I'm going to limit that to 30 students per class. So I'm looking to just open this up for a week, and it's actually live on Driverless World School now. And I'm going to open this for a week, and I'm going to stop registration after that. So I have a big countdown saying, for 7 days registration. So check it out. Ask me questions, go tell your friends. I'm looking for a couple companies to give me sponsorship for some people who might not be able to afford a paid course, but I'm going to give 4 weeks each of live class sessions. And then on the fourth week, I'm going to have two speakers. I'm going to have John Krupi, who's going to be talking about analytics on the edge, real use cases. It's about, and then David Kerrigan has agreed to come join us and talk to us again. So thank you, David. And I would have one more speaker, which is a surprise speaker that I will let you know once you sign up. So 4 live sessions with me as a whole class setting, one session with the guest speaker on how this is really done in the industry, on-demand videos for each week on all the different topics. And then I would give like a half an hour, like a one-on-one mentoring session, which I do with all my Stanford students. I want you to tell me what is your goal, what are you trying to achieve by taking this course, so that I can help you optimize that the so that it could be, changing jobs or developing a business model for your business or figuring out what you do with this. But autonomous vehicle data space is huge, and that's what is going to drive a lot of business that's going to build this whole ecosystem. I see a lot more questions. They have to get your permission if they use your data. Yeah, this goes back to, so Usha is asking, do they have to use your permission to use your data? I think most companies kind of have these terms of service somewhere where they check off they're getting our permission. But by what we were talking in the beginning about the California privacy law and the GDPR, they have to keep getting our permission every time they come with new uses for data. So data is a huge topic. So I have some research about value creation from data. So you can have a certain value from the data. When it decays and you look at historic data, it could give you a different pattern. My driving behavior, it could give me, or what time of the day and what I do, right? So it could be that, or combined with another data with another partner, it could give a different value. And so they have to come back and get permission according to GDPR, but not according to general American law or anywhere else in the world that I'm aware of. Patrick is saying, I wonder about business model for AR VR. We spoke briefly about it. What if the third party AR VR system fails? Yeah. So if you're paying explicitly, say in the Mercedes case, you can have augmented reality and in using the Ask Mercedes app. It has not failed. Mercedes has done a fabulous job with it. But if the AR system fails, as consumers, I might have been excited about this feature and go bought the car. I have no way to go back and say, hey, you did, this failed and now you need to give my money back to a car company because I bought the whole car. If that is where there is going to be new business models, which is just an extra service that somebody would offer, either the car maker or any of the technology platforms in the car, or a third party which will use that data to build services, like the progressive insurance dongle use case I was talking about. That's when they can charge specifically, and you can say it's not working now, get me my money back. Otherwise, there is no way that you can get your money back. In the Mercedes case, if they are using AR from Euphoria, so if for some reason that fails, I'm sure in their contract with Euphoria, they have something, they'll go back to Euphoria and say, hey, you're supposed to make this work, and now it failed. Then they might have some financial recourse by which they would, get it fixed, or, switch vendors and things like that. So I want feedback from everybody on what you are hearing and what more can we cover. I keep touching on edge analytics and privacy by design, and I'm not getting to it within this time. So maybe we can cover that next week. I have not done justice to the whole AV business model because there's so many business models. And since this is a Q&A, we are talking about a lot of things on a flow. So give me feedback. Would you want me to come and say, hey, these are the different business models, A, B, and C? I have about 10 different business models for autonomous vehicles in my book. Most of them are data-driven business models, not all of them. So I could actually cover that way. or we could keep this conversation that we are doing the way we are doing it. So give me feedback, because I want this to work for you. So I'm launching this paid course, Business of Autonomous Vehicle Data on Driverless World School. My AV business course is still free and is going to stay free, and you'll have access to it forever. And I'm going to keep this live Q&A ongoing, hopefully for a long time, each week. And I will put the archive of this as a free content on Driverless World School. So I'm trying to cater to everybody. So if you can't afford the course, or you're not quite ready, this is not the right thing, then you still get to have a conversation with me, and you get to have fun conversation and learn about this topic. And then if that makes sense, then you could actually sign up for that course too. Yeah. Okay, Risha is saying that. She has a few questions on the course. May I contact you? Yes, you can contact me on LinkedIn. In fact, when you go to the Driverless World School, if you scroll down, I have the free course, then you have the all courses link, and then it shows this other course. I'm going to find a way to kind of make this more visible. I didn't want to just show a bunch of courses and take away from the free course that people are signing up. I had 30 people sign up for the free course last week, and I want that to benefit people. So I'm trying to find the right interface to promote this course. But there is a form which says, hey, give me a free bonus and tell me more about the course. Maybe you can sign up there, and I can do an email with you also, if that's interesting for you. You can obviously contact me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and my usual channels. And I have a newsletter if you want to sign up. Again, if you go to Driverless World School, at the top there's a newsletter link, and you can sign up. And I send weekly newsletters with latest news, and about this live session, what I'm doing, any other article or content or keynotes, and I usually share opportunities of jobs and speaking ops and things like that. So with that, we have reached our 1 hour. I need to wrap up. Thank you, Patrick. Awesome. Awesome. I'm happy you like it. So thank you, everybody, for yet another session. And I hope I answered your question. I feel like, we have barely scratched the surface of this topic. So I hope to have another conversation. And till then, ciao. I will see you next week. And I will come back and I will put a saved archive of this course on Driverless World School, and I will keep that free version going. But for those of you who are serious about this whole AV data as a business, as your career, and you want to get into that space, then I think the business of autonomous vehicle data as a certificate course over a 4-week period would be the right one for you. So thank you, everybody. Bye now. I'm going to switch off.